On November 15, 2025, a new voice echoed across Mexico, Generation Z, demanding change. It was a day that would be remembered as a turning point, when the country's youth decided to rise up and make themselves heard. Their voices, once dismissed as background noise, now rang out with urgency and hope, reverberating through city streets and rural towns alike. Fed up with corruption, crime, and injustice, they organized protests in over 50 cities, uniting people from all backgrounds. Students, workers, artists, and activists marched side by side, their differences set aside for a common cause. The sheer scale of the mobilization was unprecedented, with entire neighborhoods pouring into the streets, waving banners and chanting for a better future. Parents, older activists, and supporters of slain Mayor Carlos Manzo joined, showing these issues affect everyone. The pain of loss and the desire for justice brought generations together, as families held up photos of loved ones lost to violence and corruption. Their presence was a reminder that the fight for change was not just for the young, but for all Mexicans. The unity on display sent a clear message: the patience of the people has run out. The chants grew louder, echoing off the walls of government buildings, as the crowd demanded answers and accountability. It was a moment of collective strength, where hope overcame fear and resignation. Young Mexicans are tired of insecurity and watching their country's potential wasted. They dream of a nation where opportunity is not stolen by corruption, and where safety is not a privilege but a right. Their determination was written on their faces, in every step they took and every word they shouted. Protesters carried signs like "No more corruption" and "We want justice." Their messages painted boldly in bright colors. Each sign told a story, of frustration, of hope, and of a refusal to accept the status quo any longer. They expressed exhaustion with the status quo, their faces marked by both fatigue and resolve. Many had marched for hours, but their spirits remained unbroken, fueled by the belief that real change was finally within reach. The movement wasn't about one leader, it was a rejection of a failed system. The crowd's power came from its unity, from the shared conviction that the people, together, could not be defeated. Their chant, "El pueblo unido jamás será vencido," became the heartbeat of the protest. From border cities to the south, thousands gathered peacefully, demanding accountability. In Tijuana, Chiapas, and everywhere in between, the message was the same: enough is enough. The movement's reach was national, its spirit unstoppable. Social media transformed online frustration into a powerful nationwide movement. Hashtags trended, live streams spread the energy of the protests, and young organizers coordinated in real time, making sure every voice was amplified. The government was put on notice. A new generation is watching, and they refused to stay silent. The world saw a generation determined to reclaim their future, and their cry for change could no longer be ignored. The November 15th movement was fueled by three words: crime, corruption, and impunity. For many, these are daily realities: violence, bribery, and a justice system that rarely delivers. High-profile crimes go unsolved, and citizens are left to fend for themselves. Generation Z Mexico, using TikTok and Instagram, bypassed traditional media to rally their peers. Their digital-first approach turned frustration into real-world action. Young people see their country's potential, but are blocked by systemic obstacles. They want safer streets, honest government, and basic rights. The protests were a demand for a future where justice isn't for sale. This was not just about youth, it was a fight for all Mexicans. November 15th was their declaration. They're ready to fight for change. Most protests were peaceful, but Mexico City's demonstration took a violent turn. In the Zocalo, a small group of hooded agitators broke away, targeting the security fence around the National Palace. They tore down the barrier, triggering a direct confrontation with riot police. Chaos erupted as objects were thrown, and the peaceful crowd was caught in the middle. The violence escalated quickly, overshadowing the movement's message. Families scrambled for safety as the square became a battleground. The dramatic scenes in Mexico City dominated media coverage, drawing attention away from peaceful protests elsewhere. The actions of a few threatened to define the entire movement. Yet, the day began with hope and unity, a stark contrast to its chaotic end. In the heart of Mexico City, tensions reached a boiling point as authorities responded with force when the security fence, meant to keep crowds at bay, was toppled by the surging mass of protesters. The air was thick with anticipation and anxiety, as both sides braced for what would come next. Riot police quickly moved in, deploying tear gas canisters that sent clouds of choking smoke billowing through the streets. Protesters, many of whom had come to demonstrate peacefully, were caught off guard. Panic swept through the crowd as people scrambled to escape the stinging gas, some helping others who had fallen or were overcome by fumes. The chaos resulted in a staggering number of injuries. According to official reports, 120 people were hurt, most of them police officers. 40 required hospitalization, while at least 20 civilians suffered injuries ranging from minor cuts to more serious wounds. Ambulances and medics rushed to the scene, weaving through the crowds to provide urgent care. Eyewitnesses described scenes where the distinction between order and disorder blurred. Some claimed that police, in the heat of the moment, threw rocks back at protesters, escalating the confrontation and raising questions about the use of force. In the aftermath, authorities arrested 20 people on charges related to the violence, while another 20 were detained for lesser offenses. The arrests added to the tension as families and supporters demanded answers and accountability. As police moved to clear the square, their actions grew increasingly aggressive. Officers chased down demonstrators, some of whom were beaten as they tried to flee. These scenes, captured on video and shared widely, drew sharp criticism from human rights groups and the public, who accused authorities of using excessive force. Amid the turmoil, volunteer doctors and medics sprang into action. They set up makeshift triage stations right on the streets, treating wounds and offering comfort to the injured. Their presence was a lifeline for many caught in the crossfire. The quick response of these medical teams, along with ordinary citizens who stepped in to help, was a powerful reminder of the community's resilience and the movement's broader goals of solidarity and justice. Even as violence erupted around them, many protesters focused on helping those in need, carrying the wounded to safety, sharing water, and offering words of encouragement. Acts of kindness shone through the chaos. The day's events left a deep and lasting mark on the nation's conscience. For many, the images of violence and compassion will not soon be forgotten. In the end, the spirit of public service and community stood in stark contrast to the violence, offering hope that unity and empathy can prevail even in the darkest moments. The protests were fueled by years of frustration with government failure to provide security. Crime, corruption, and impunity have become daily realities for many families. Protesters demanded safety in their homes and communities, a right long neglected. Corruption at all levels, from police to politicians, has eroded public trust. Calls for better healthcare funding and protection for professionals like doctors were central. Impunity, where crimes go unpunished, has shattered faith in justice. The movement united young and old, doctors, families of missing persons, and ordinary citizens. It was a collective cry for accountability and a rejection of a broken system. The protests demanded a fair, functional, and safe Mexico for all. The assassination of Michoacán Mayor Carlos Manzo was a catalyst for the protests. Manzo, known for confronting crime and corruption, was murdered at a public event, shocking the nation. His death symbolized the dangers faced by those who challenge criminal power. Protesters carried his image, demanding justice and honoring his legacy. Manzo's murder put a human face on the fight against impunity. Many doubted the government's promises of a full investigation, fueling anger and skepticism. His case became a rallying point for those demanding real change and protection for the brave. Mexico's Gen Z protests are part of a global wave of youth-led movements. Young activists worldwide use social media to organize, inspire, and demand change. In Nepal, youth protests over a TikTok ban led to the Prime Minister's resignation. Madagascar's youth-driven demonstrations toppled the government after weeks of unrest. Bangladesh and Indonesia have also seen student-led movements challenge entrenched power. These examples show young people as their nation's conscience, using digital tools to amplify their voices. The Mexican protests are the latest chapter in this global story. Gen Z is proving that youth activism can reshape societies. Their energy and digital fluency are powerful forces for accountability. The world is watching as young people demand a better future. Despite its grassroots energy, the Generation Z Mexico movement faced controversy. President Sheinbaum accused opposition parties of co-opting the protests for political gain. Claims of social media bots and influencer withdrawals fueled skepticism about the movement's authenticity. Opposition figures like Vicente Fox and Ricardo Salinas Pliego openly endorsed the marches, complicating the narrative. Some journalists questioned whether the protests were truly youth-driven or orchestrated by political opponents. The movement's legitimacy became a subject of heated debate. Supporters insisted it was a genuine youth uprising. Critics saw political manipulation. The controversy cast a shadow, but the core grievances remained real. The November 15th protests marked a pivotal moment in Mexico's ongoing struggle for justice, security, and dignity. On that day, thousands of people from all walks of life poured into the streets of Mexico City, united by a shared sense of urgency and hope. The sheer scale of the demonstration sent a powerful message, not just to the government, but to the world. The people of Mexico refused to accept the status quo any longer. While images of violence and confrontation dominated the headlines, the true heart of the movement was a generation rising up to demand a future free from fear and injustice. These protests were not just about a single event. They were about years of frustration boiling over, about voices that had been silenced for too long finally being heard. Their message, against crime, corruption, and impunity, echoed through the city's avenues and across the nation. Young people, students, workers, and families stood shoulder to shoulder, united in their demand for accountability and real change. Political controversy and attempts to discredit the movement couldn't erase the genuine anger, pain, and hope that filled the streets. For many, this was a deeply personal fight, one that touched their families, their communities, and their dreams for the future. The murder of leaders like Carlos Manzo was a stark reminder of the risks faced by those who dare to demand change. Yet, instead of silencing the movement, these tragedies only fueled the determination of protesters, inspiring even more people to join the cause. Mexico's youth, connected like never before through technology and social media, joined a global movement for justice. They used their voices online and offline, live streaming demonstrations, sharing stories, and building solidarity with activists around the world. The government, once able to ignore or dismiss these calls for change, now faces a new reality. The frustration and demands of the people are impossible to overlook, and officials are being forced to respond in ways they never have before. The fight for a safer, more just Mexico is far from over. Every march, every chant, and every act of resistance adds to the momentum, pushing the country closer to the future its people deserve. Deep-rooted problems like corruption and violence won't be solved overnight, but the spirit of these protests endures. The courage and resilience of those who take to the streets inspire hope, even in the face of daunting challenges. Against all odds, a new generation is rising, determined to shape a better, brighter future for themselves and for all of Mexico. Their unyielding fight continues, lighting the way forward for the entire nation.